Starting off in the midst of a recession, 2009 got off to a rocky start, complete with a studio closure and a controversial title. With consumer spending down in general, it was up to the summer conventions to build the hype that the industry would need for a stellar holiday season. But after Microsoft stole all of E3's thunder with the announcement of Natal, the other major players, like Sony, needed to make a comeback in the second half if they were going to make it to the finish line. During Germany's Gamescom in August, Sony announced the PlayStation 3 Slim, which would debut alongside a $100 price cut and a complete rebranding. It was easily the biggest announcement of the convention and gave the company their first positive buzz in months. After Gamescom closed, Blizzard held their annual BlizzCon and dropped a megaton with Cataclysm. Blizzard will simultaneously change many elements of the game for all players, regardless of whether or not they buy Cataclysm. Territories will be reformed, stats will be merged or removed, and the MMO juggernaut will be given its biggest change in its impressive lifecycle. Meanwhile, the future of downloadable games never looked brighter than when Shadow Complex released on August 19th. In its first week alone, it was downloaded over 200,000 times, beating the record that Battlefield 1943 had set barely a month earlier. Once the home of indie game developers, Xbox Live Arcade is increasingly looking like the next big distribution space for major publishers. September brought with it news that both Sony and Microsoft could rejoice in. For the first time in its troubled history, the PlayStation 3, newly slimmed down, was the #1 selling console in the US. At the same time, Halo 3 ODST, at first thought to be a relatively minor release from Bungie, sold 2.5 million copies in just 2 weeks, making the expansion one of the year's best-selling titles. Outside the console world, the new MMORPG, Ion, came to the Western market with over 1 million pre-orders, making it one of the world's most played MMOs right out of the gate. But all those new PS3 owners needed a hit title of their own, and got it with the release of Uncharted 2 Among Thieves in October. The critically acclaimed game was the top-selling game of the month and added to Sony's increasingly positive momentum. Sadly, the much-hyped DJ Hero did not get any of that love, selling only 150,000 units in a month across 4 consoles, and is well on its way to being the biggest flop of the year, possibly because people were saving their money for the flood of big November games. Given consumer caution in the economic recession and the huge names of the November titles, a number of high-profile games were pushed back into 2010, including Mass Effect 2, God of War 3, BioShock 2, and Splinter Cell Conviction. The ones left standing were some of the year's biggest titles, including Left 4 Dead 2, Dragon Age Origins, and Assassin's Creed 2. But the big winner of the month, the year, and all time was Modern Warfare 2.
You ever hear the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Christ, one day you're going to find that cuts both ways.
The latest in Infinity Ward's ever more popular franchise, Modern Warfare 2 has been shattering records since the day it launched. It made $310 million in its first day of release, $550 million in its first 5 days, and at the end of November, the entire Call of Duty franchise crossed the $3 billion mark. Now that's a kill streak. The PS3 would also be getting one other title in November, Netflix Instant. On a disc. Way to go, PS3. But not all the news was good. On November 10th, Electronic Arts posted a $391 million operating loss, one day after buying social game maker Playfish for $275 million. With the huge losses came huge cutbacks, with EA canceling many titles in production and promising to focus only on known hits, like their sports franchises. Worst of all was the announcement that they would be cutting 1,500 jobs, and at the end of the month, EA shut down the successful Pandemic Studios. This meant that EA effectively acquired a casual game studio at the cost of a hardcore one, and is seen as a sign of the changing times as game publishers look to expand past traditional markets. The year comes to a close with the release of two last major titles, Pandemic's swan song, The Saboteur, and the game version of James Cameron's much-hyped Avatar. As with the film, the game can be viewed in either 2D or 3D, and unlike most movie tie-ins, the game was given a long development cycle to ensure a polished product.
How many are there?
On the whole, the industry sales are expected to drop by 3%, with console sales down 13%. It is the first time since 2004 that the industry has shrunk, all the more biting after the record growth of 2007 and 2008. Still, with all-around signs that the economic recession may be ending, and with consoles cheaper than ever, analysts remain optimistic that 2010 will see the video game industry thriving once again. If games like Modern Warfare 2 can smash records even in a down year, the future looks very bright for a year filled with more mega sequels and new titles like Dante's Inferno and Darksiders. But as more and more dollars go towards casual gaming and more intuitive user interfaces, the very shape of the industry may shift dramatically by the time 2010 is finished. The only way to find out is to keep on playing.
That was no message. This is a message.